get started. So welcome everyone. Let me just,
And happy Earth Day.
yes, happy Earth Day. Just to let you know that the use of automated note-taking bots or similar tools during these events and meetings requires prior approval. Unauthorized use is prohibited because it does risk individuals' confidentiality. Any recording that's created through AI is not recognized as official, and we do reserve the right to exit people from the trainings if they're using any of these unauthorized tools. Just a new little note we have to talk about. So welcome to today's MI session on ORs, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Ken Kinter and I are with the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. I work in the Integrated Employment Institute, where I provide implementation support, training, consultation around best practice employment services with local providers and providers outside of our state, like you, around supported employment and other career services. Ken?
And I work in our state hospital project where we are working on bringing evidence-based practices into our state psychiatric hospitals, in addition to anything else they can throw at us along the way.
That's the
You have
fun
to think
part, right?
the main thing, and then you do all these other extraneous things too, which is also a lot of fun.
So I think people are kind of telling us in the chat where they're from.
Mhm.
You kind of know the drill by now. We usually ask you to just kind of write in the chat where you're from, maybe even a little bit what brought you to today's learning community. What about the topic was interesting? You can kind of go ahead and do that. But for the sake of time, because we do have some practice that we want to get to today, we're going to move ahead. Our MI learning community has been meeting on the fourth Tuesday of every month from 9 to 10 a.m. And again, just to remind you, it's this peer learning around specific topics, in this situation, relevant to motivational interviewing. So we've gone through a series of topics, such as helping people focus on their change goals, recognizing change talk. Today and next month, we're going to be practicing ORs. And then in June, our final learning community, we're going to talk about how to recognize what stage of change someone is in and what types of strategies and resources are available to help people move throughout the stages of change. So I don't know if people were able to practice any of the ORs tools and techniques from last week, but Ken and I had asked if you had an opportunity before we met today to use the ORS worksheet, which we sent out with the PowerPoint presentation and other materials for you to, in your meetings with someone, it could be anyone, it could have been a family member, a friend, or someone that you might have a chance to interact with, using the ORS worksheet to identify the times that you used the ORS skills. So I don't know if anyone had a chance to do that. Um, but if you did, would love to hear from you, would love to hear how it went, um, what was challenging, what was easy, what were some of the OR skills that you did use? Let's see. Yes,
Joni,
Christy, I believe it was emailed. And Ken will put the link into the chat of the ORS worksheet so you can all kind of take a look at it.
mhm.
Okay, Natalie, it says you're not receiving the emails. Yeah, we'll have to mention that to our liaisons in Washington, and let them know. Okay. Looks like several people haven't been receiving the emails. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I don't know why. Immediately after the sessions, we send the PowerPoint presentation and any accompanying materials over to our liaisons there for distribution within their listserv and other. All right, we will definitely make sure to address that.
Yeah, seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, so
Joni, if I put the Rutgers Connect, will that come up in here if people activate that, or that's not going to work?
um yeah, you know what? I have it right here, Ken. So,
No, I got it in the chat already, but I don't know if that is going to work for everybody. So if
oh yeah, it should. If
somebody
somebody could
tries that
test
link
it.
out, let me know if that works.
So this is the
There we go. Thank you, Lisa.
works.
Yay.
Okay, good. So, um yes, if you want to click on the link that Ken just sent, it's a shared document. Um, but this is what it looked like. We were hoping to be able, to get a sense of how those interactions went, based on some practice that you might have been able to do over the past month. Did anyone, let's peek here in the chat, have a chance? Okay, Stephanie, we will
Yeah,
ask.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, we don't have access to the listserv of all of the participants. We just send our information and the resources and the PowerPoint materials, to our liaisons there in Washington. So we will make a note to, okay. Okay, it looks like Letitia, the last one you got was from the first session. Okay, we will definitely address that and
Mhm.
make sure everyone's getting the materials, because there are the recordings and everything along with that. So kind of getting back to the OARS worksheet, I don't know even, yep, you're welcome. Since it sounds like many people didn't receive the worksheet,
Hmm.
did anyone have a chance, even aside from using the sheet? We kind of just have this to conceptualize what it is, that makes up the OARS acronym. Did anyone have a chance to use some of the open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries when you're working with someone, or when you're working, I don't know, even with people you might be supervising, or your friends or your family? Anyone have a chance to practice using some of these skills? We'll wait a few minutes in the chat, and you can always unmute your mics. You want to talk about it. And if not, we have an opportunity to practice before our next session. So Angela feels like I use OARS on a regular basis. Absolutely.
There was another sheet that you guys had sent out with the ores. It was different from this one.
Was it the, payoff matrix?
It had the questions, kind of questions to ask, and I forget what it was. I think it had some green on it.
Green on it.
Let me
Yeah.
think. And that was from us?
For
Okay.
sure.
Oh, the darn ruler. Yes, the
Oh,
darn
yeah, the
ruler.
darn, yeah. So I
Got it,
used the
David.
darn,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you, Denise. Your memory is better than mine. Yes, the darn ruler, listening for change talk and that
Yes.
preparatory change talk. Letitia, I used ORS this morning with a participant. He was feeling down and depressed. I asked what would make you feel better. He said coffee and hot food, since he had not had hot food in a very long time. When we got him food, he felt so grateful. So asking that open-ended question, right, Letitia? What would make you feel better? Um, and he was able to answer that. Yes, Letitia, this helped him change his mind and became
Mhm.
willing to, go to his appointment. Tina, I use affirmations regularly, as this builds trust and never fails to bring a smile to a client's face. I use reflections, summaries, um, because perspectives are numerous and varied. Absolutely. So kind of reflecting back and summarizing what the person is telling you to kind of get a sense of what their perspective on the situation is, or their viewpoint. Great.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of this. I don't think learning motivational interviewing isn't like learning a lot of brand new things. I think it's almost more of an organization of certain, techniques. Again, have you praised somebody? Yes. Have you asked open-ended questions to people? Yes, you have. You've done all those things. But to me, the thing that I got from learning this is, I don't want to say systematic because that sounds too structured, but just that you're aware. And I catch myself thinking, all right, let's see, have I done an affirmation yet? Would that be a good reflection? Do I want to reflect content or do I want to reflect feeling? And just being able to question it and know more, being able to consciously choose what I'm going to do. So it isn't just kind of a straight back and forth with people and trying to catch everything during the course of a conversation with somebody.
So we also want to get a sense of, in general, how's it been going? How has using motivational interviewing, whether it's the specific techniques, whether it's kind of embodying that spirit of MI that Ken and I talked about early on when the whole series began, or whether it's really looking at um, examining and understanding change talk and um, so what's been successful? What's been working well with using motivational interviewing? And what's not been working that great?
Yeah, actually, I'm really interested in that. If people have gotten stuck somewhere or they've tried to use it or it hasn't worked for them, I'm really curious about what happened there. Let's address anything that's made it difficult to implement.
Again, unmute your mic,
Mhm.
pop in the chat, whatever's best.
So for myself, this is something that I have to practice. It's something I'm still in the process of learning, but I've also noticed sometimes, depending on the person, using open-ended questions, you still kind of get shut down sometimes.
Mm.
Like you'll say why, and they'll just be like, well, because, and that's just kind of a resistance that you get with some people. So I just try working through that and just still try to engage them to whatever degree they're comfortable with, and hoping that as we meet and build trust, that these open-ended questions will come with better, it will be received better by them and I'll get more information. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
It does. It does. Questions are still somewhat directive, just the choosing what you're going to ask about. So it is it's guiding, but there's also a point where it's leading. Your question kind of leads toward what's important to you. And it may not be as important to the client. Like a client might say, well, I'm hungry, and I don't have anywhere to live, and I've been using a lot of drugs. And if your question is about drugs, and you've already telegraphed, where your direction is.
Yeah, no, I try
And
really hard to stay,
yep.
with whatever they want to talk about.
And then that's one of the nice parts about reflections is reflections tend to just go in the direction where the person went. So I hear you got a lot of stuff going on, food, housing,
Yep.
drug situation. You got a lot going on right now. And then you haven't directed them anywhere. You just sent it
Right,
back.
right.
And that way the person can, maybe their priority is food, which I couldn't argue with. And
Right.
and so that's one of those things. So there's closed-ended questions which are extremely directive. Then you have
Mm-hmm.
open-ended questions which are better but still somewhat directive. And then
Yeah.
you get into the reflections, which lets the person keep going in the direction they were going before. So it's a lot
Right.
harder to dig your
It,
heels in
it,
there.
it is kind like I said, it's something that I didn't realize would take a lot of practice on my end. But I'm finding it that, the more I practice, the better it gets.
It gets
So,
easier. And
yeah.
after a while, you break through, and then you don't realize you're doing it. Joni and I have discussions about it where we laugh, and I go, "God, I reflected again." Like at a certain point, you might not be able to turn it off. That's
My kids are gonna love this.
Right?
Oh
my
yeah.
wife too. My wife got the treatment as soon as I got home from my big training. He was like, "This is this crap you were learning about, right?" I was like, "Guilty."
That's funny.
But actually, I'll tell you that if you are, we talk about the practice sessions. Trying it out at work is obviously the in vivo,
Yeah. Yeah.
experiment with this. But I strongly suggest trying it out with someone, a loved one or a family member.
I do. I try.
Preferably someone that you've had the same conversation with a bunch of times before. Because I guarantee if you change what you do, that's going to change what you get back, because that other person already knows what you're going to say. If it's your teenage kid or
It's
your
going to be my youngest daughter, and you're
it-
absolutely right.
so
I
I
should
could go
try
ask her
that.
right now, what's Marlene going to say? Scribble. I don't know what you're going to say. She knows what you're going to say.
She knows what I'm going to say.
And you probably know
You're
what she's going to
absolutely
say.
right.
So we have it
Yep.
all figured out already. But
And
once
then it
we get
stops the
Marlene
whole
to change,
conversation.
yep,
Yeah.
we get Marlene to change what she asks or says, and then all of a sudden you're going to get a different thing back. And that's good. That's progress. You're going somewhere. Just doing
I'm
the
going to
same.
And there's
practice with her. Thank you. That's a good
couple
idea.
of challenges, impasse areas in the chat here. I do feel that sometimes clients have an expectation of answers from me as a case manager, so asking them guiding or leading questions isn't always something they're interested in hearing. I know that answers isn't my job, but it can lead to an impasse. And then Maddie kind of responded with, yes, I've been feeling that resistance too, a lot of shrugs, sure, non-answers. I guess she was responding to you, Marlene. But what do you think, Ken? That idea that, you know, clients might be coming in with an expectation of answers, and sometimes
Yeah,
asking those questions could feel like there's an impasse.
the two most valid complaints that I hear, or barriers that I hear about, is one is, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. We got to get down to business. We got to get the solution. Go, go, go. Let's fix people are under a lot of pressure. They have to get things done. Working in the emergency room, it was a little harder to do motivational interviewing because you have to take the time to develop the relationship and do more of this listening bit. And when there's a real time pressure, it's difficult. So that is a very valid concern. But I also found that if I didn't do that, then I ended up developing all sorts of resistance and, in fact, contributing to it. And then that slowed the whole process down. Um, the other one that I hear is exactly what you said, is that there are people that come in looking for answers, and they may be just accustomed to being told what to do and what the next move is going to be. Um, they may be dependent on people. They may be dependent on people personally and professionally. Here, fix this
Yeah.
for me. Um, and that's absolutely valid. And from the perspective that Joni and I come from with psychiatric rehabilitation, we're trying to call people out. We're trying to entice them out to say, well, no, wait a minute. What is it that you want to change? What is it that you want to do here? I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to give you the answers because I'm not always going to be there. You have your answers. We just got to get your answers and your problems all lined up together. You brought the problems and you brought the answers along with. So it's an empowerment piece, but the hardest part of that empowerment piece is right in the beginning because they fight it. Some people fight being empowered. We have people at the hospital. They hate the state hospital more than anything. When they get ready to get discharged, they'll throw a chair through a window because they're afraid. But I mean, there's a bunch of reasons why, but they're afraid because to go out there and fail again, or to be as bad as being in a state hospital is, there are worse places to be and worse things to experience. And they've experienced some of those. I didn't know the word abandonmenium until I worked in a state hospital. We have people that live in abandonmeniums out in the community. They're bombed out, used to be buildings, but they're residences. And some of those places, especially, I'm guessing with a Washington winter too, but a New Jersey winter, those can be tough to get through. So, I think we try. It's hard, but we try to resist the temptation to take over. Let's let that person. They have the choice. They have the call. We support them and help guide them in where they want to go, not leading them. But it's hard. So let's see. Any other barriers? Any other challenges? I just saw something come up.
Um, yes, and Julie writes, and then you get the complete opposite where you have those that don't like the structure as much as and the setup of structure and timelines and things at that like that. But I feel like having these conversations in their own environment where they feel comfortable and open up a little bit more. Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the funny things about providing services online, they're not in your office, they're in their home. They're in their home field, which
Yeah.
is occasionally makes people more comfortable. I'm also amazed what people will say to a computer that they wouldn't say to somebody in person, which is hilarious.
Ken's going to give a little overview or review of ORS, just to kind of set the stage a little bit. Again, we had a series, a four-part series, probably maybe a year ago now, maybe a little less than a year ago, and we went in depth with ORS. So hopefully you received those materials from that webinar. But Ken's going to give a little bit of an overview and just a quick kind of summary.
Sure. And this is right in line with what's in the handout. So if you look at the quadrants on the handout, within each quadrant, there's like a little cheat, a little line, a little starter, just so you kind of know what something looks like. So the O for OR stands for open-ended questions. And we talked before about the difference between open and closed-ended. Closed-endeds are yes, no, or a short piece of information like your name, address, next court date, something like that. And again, we want open-ended questions because, and I think Marlene illustrated this very well, you get more back. You're wide open to get answers. When we ask very pointed, specific questions, we only get pointed, specific pieces of information. There may be a lot that's missing besides that. And the example I always gave was the person who was sniffing gasoline. That's not in too many addictions assessments, but that is a fairly important topic to cover if somebody has that as part of their history. So by asking it in an open-ended way, you get that, but you don't capture it when you go line by line, form by form. Just as an aside, those of you who do assessments and have your paperwork where you have these questions you're supposed to ask, one of the challenges you can do with this open and closed-ended questions is look at your intake form or your interview form or whatever you use to fill out. Can you get that same information without asking those closed-ended questions? Can you do it by asking open-ended questions like, can you tell me about your history of addiction? Or, you're just throwing the questions out instead of going through each line, each yes or no question. That's one of the ways that I learned how to do it, to try to make it a little more fun and educational while I did it. Affirmations, I saw a lot of people giving feedback there. It's praise. And the way I like to capture this is catch somebody doing something right. If hygiene is a big issue with somebody that you're working with and you saw they got a haircut, they got a nice shave, they got whatever, catch them doing something right. I think it's the single greatest thing you can do, especially in the beginning of a relationship, to develop that therapeutic element. It shows that you're watching. Motivational interviewing is all about that they know that you're listening, but in this case, they also know that you're watching and observing what they do, and you're rooting for them, right? You're on their side. My last word about affirmations is there's different depths of affirmations. There's the "you look nice today" kind of affirmation, which is great. But then there's also, once you get to know somebody, there's that deeper level. Like, one thing I appreciate about you is that you're always honest. Even when you have bad news, you always just tell me straight up what it is, and I appreciate that. Or you've always been punctual. Every time I've seen you, you've been here, on time. So I can tell you're very serious when you say you're going to be somewhere, you're going to be there. So those deeper affirmations, they're probably things that person is quietly very proud of. So it's a nice thing to notice that. Reflections is the one we spent probably the most time on, and it's probably the trickiest skill of all of them. And the two parts of reflections are the simple reflection, which is just giving back what you get. It's almost like an echo. The person gets to hear their own words back from you just to see how they fit, because they sound different when you hear them than when you say them. So there's repetition where you say it exactly the same way, and then there's rephrase where you can tweak it a little bit and see how that person responds to what you said differently. The complex reflections to me are where the fun is, because you probably have hypotheses going on about what's going on with the client. And this is where you get to put those hypotheses to test. So when a person shares with you, like I always give the example about me trying to be a vegetarian and being a terrible vegetarian. That's like one of my classic examples. And so people will always reflect back to me. They'll either reflect back the content of what I said, trying to be a vegetarian, or they'll reflect back the emotion. For example, me being frustrated that I keep failing, and being critical of myself. Then there's another type of reflection. This is my favorite one, and if you get skilled at this one, you're pretty much a graduate. From here on out, it's just practice. If you can make a reflection that's double-sided, that catches both sides of the argument, That to me is a really, really big piece. If you can say, look, I understand that you want to quit smoking, but you have a very stressful job, and smoking is one of the ways you deal with that stress. Or it can be anything. I know you want to join a gym and get in better shape, but gyms cost money and it takes time, and you don't have that money and that time right now. You're not weighing in whether change should happen or not. You're validating both sides of the argument. You're validating the person of the process. So that's the one that I'm the biggest fan of. And then the last but not least is the summary piece, which is after you've had an interaction with somebody, how can you recap the whole thing in a couple sentences so that person knows that you heard them? That's the whole point of motivational interviewing when you come out of an interaction with somebody, is that they feel like they've been heard. Not that somebody's tried to fix them or change them, but that they've been heard. So the summary is, all right, I want to make sure, we've been talking about for about 45 minutes now. I want to make sure I got this straight. A, B, C, and then did I get it right? And if you got it right, you'll know it from their nonverbals. And if you didn't get it right, you'll also know it from their nonverbals, because they can't wait to correct you and make you, because they want you to get it. What's the point of them talking to you for 45 minutes if you're not going to understand at the end? So that's what that's a short version of what the ORs are. And I think next we're going to do a little practice with this, because I know some of you had a chance to practice it with clients. Some of you have had a chance to practice personally. Oh, you want to show the video first?
Yeah, what do you want to set it up, Ken, and kind of let
So-
people while I'm queuing it up?
Yep. Basically, you're going to see Tony, and Tony and his coworker are going to be talking, and you're going to see Tony using the oars. So I want you to keep an eye on it and see if you can identify what he does as he does it, and let's see how it works in this given, in this given situation.
It's about 3 minutes. Ken, you want to give me a thumbs up that you can hear it and everything?
Yep, I'm still seeing the slide right now.
All right.
Oh, that's it.
All right.
Kati's been seeing me for the last few months. She was referred by her general practitioner to talk about her depression. Good afternoon, Kati. It's nice to see you today.
Hi, it's nice to see you too.
So when you were here last, we were talking a little bit more about your side effects to your medication. Can you tell me how you're feeling now?
Yeah, I'm feeling okay. Just a little out of it and sleepy. The medication seems strong.
You feel groggy because of your medication.
Yes, a little bit like I'm in a fog.
Kati, can you tell me, what does foggy feel like to you?
I don't know. I guess I just feel worn out and my mind isn't as clear and I'm having trouble concentrating.
The medication's affecting your thinking.
It affects my thinking and my sleep. I never used to sleep after 6 a.m. and now I'm waking up after 8:30.
You're sleeping a lot later in the morning.
Yes, and I'm late for work a lot these days. My boss has been okay so far with my lateness, but I know he will eventually get frustrated with my being late.
Your boss is being really supportive so far.
So far he has, but who knows what he's thinking and planning to do. He does know a little bit about my depression because I've had to take a leave last year. I don't know. I'm still considering stopping the medication because of the sleepiness and feeling out of it.
So, Kati, it sounds like you've been really taking your time and giving some careful consideration to this decision. What do you think it would be like to stop taking your medication?
Well, I've stopped in the past and it wasn't such a great idea. I was in a very dark place, and then I even had to go to the ER. But I'm better now and I feel like my depression's under control.
So you feel less depressed now, and you recognize that stopping your medication in the past hasn't always been the best choice.
For the most part, yes. I feel less depressed. My family and I have been getting along a lot better. Although the other day my brother got really angry with me for sleeping in because he was having friends over and wanted me to clean up.
You've been having some trouble at home as well as at school because of your sleeping. Tell me a little bit more about what's been going on with your brother.
Well, he got mad because it was late in the afternoon and I was still asleep, and had left all of my laundry unfolded. So instead of just staying in bed or yelling at him, I just got up and nicely gathered my laundry.
You know, Kati, you handled yourself really well in that situation, maintaining and just staying calm.
Yes, I guess I did. He and I got along the rest of the day.
So before we move on, let me just make sure I'm clear on what you've said so far. Your medication has been making you sleepier than usual, and this has been a problem with your work and at home, and you're also a little bit happier and more upbeat.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So what were some of the ORS techniques that you were able to see Tony use with his coworker or his counselee? Summarizing, yes.
Yep.
What was he, what did he, I mean, you don't have to word for word tell us what he summarized, but what was the summary? What did he kind of start with?
Her taking new meds and being sleepy and getting in trouble at home, well, having problems at
Yes.
home and at work because of it.
Yeah, he was able to kind of couple like a lot of different things that she was telling him all at one time and kind of gather that information. Lots of reflections. Yes. I heard him say lots of feeling reflections. You feel groggy because of the medication. You feel depressed. What were some other reflections that you might have heard? I agree, Ken, lots of open-ended questions there too.
Yeah, he was alternating a lot of open-ended questions and reflections, and I even think he combined them at one, which I thought was cool. You know, lead with a reflection and then you send the question based out on that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he reflected on her thinking about putting a lot of thought into getting off her medication, and then he used the open-ended question afterwards. What would that look like? What would that look like for you being off your medications? And then she was able to share the last time that she got off her medication that it was not a great idea.
Yeah, and it's interesting because part of it, I mean, I'm not sure if you were, all feeling this way, but of course, we always historically are on the side of, oh, you need to take your medication, you need to take your medication. And he very impartially comes in with, well, just tell me about what happened, when you stopped it before. It wasn't done in a judgmental manner, like, oh my God, you remember what happened last time, right? Nope. He came in completely neutral on it, so she was free to just tell the story. And of course, it ended up not working out so well, so that works out. But it stops him from having to advocate for it where they don't get into a push and pull. And Cotty was free to talk and share about what was going on with her. So Anthony just let her do it. Just let her keep going. And the same way with us. If they're telling the story, don't get in the way.
Yeah. Maddie mentions here in the chat the affirmation of how she handled the situation with her brother. Yes, you handled yourself really well in that situation. Nadia wrote an open-ended question that encourages the client to share more about her concerns could be used as well. Absolutely. Letitia noted, you have stopped taking medication in the
Yep.
past. What was the outcome?
Yep.
Yeah, what I thought was really nice was the way Anthony was getting her to talk without asking a lot of questions. His reflections were just left there, and she was able to kind of respond to those reflections, correct when it was inaccurate, or kind of really reinforce that, yes, he got it. And then Nadia wrote in the chat summarizing, additionally, the effects of her medication may have played a role in shaping her current state. Understanding how the medication has influenced her well-being could provide valuable insight into her overall concerns. Yes.
Sure, because you could certainly understand how her feeling foggy and this sleep stuff has caused conflict with family and with job. So the idea that she's thinking about stopping it, in a way, it makes sense, but at the same time, and this would be that great double-sided reflection. You're really in a tough spot because with this medication, you've got some problems with the job and some problems with family. But on the other hand, when you've stopped medication in the past, it's led to you going to the hospital. That would be an interesting double-sided reflection. You're not weighing in, you're just putting both sides of the argument out because she ultimately has to make the decision for where things are going from here.
Great.
I like that he mentioned about her boss, that he has been pretty supportive and kind of make her think a little different about her boss, that she was thinking maybe the boss was upset with her, or might not want to have her work for her, but he kind of put it out there where that he's been supportive, and she agreed, like, yeah, he has been kind of supportive. So kind of take some pressure off in that area.
Right, right. That's a good point, David, because very often, without meaning to, we may actually add to the pressure, and the pressure might not be the best thing. Kind of like when we've talked about with the darn, when the need goes up really high, sometimes that can actually discourage the change process, makes the person feel very anxious, and that's not necessarily helpful. A certain degree of dissonance is a good thing to work with, but anything when taken too far is not helpful.
Great. So maybe we'll move into some practice using oars. Ken and I, over the last several sessions we've had, it's been somewhat loud and clear that many people don't like breakout sessions. However, we sort of wrangled with this a bit because practicing this skill in a group this large, there really is no other way than to have an opportunity for you to practice with someone else. So we would like to use some breakout sessions, and we're going to have quite a few breakout groups. So I don't want to give anyone an out, of course. I want you to engage, but if you are planning to not participate in the breakout session, kind of let us know, so that we can make arrangements so that the people who are wanting to participate, we can kind of get people in groups pretty quickly and have that happen and make sure the groups are, equal. So I'm gonna
We cut
go a
out
little,
we cut out a few of these, so we're trying to keep them few and short. So
yeah,
bear with us because normally if we were all in a big classroom, Joni and I would just walk around and listen to everything.
yes.
But we can't do that at this point. So we'll do this one quick and short, but so that you get a nice practice session while you're here, nice and fast, going through the OR sheet. In fact, I'll explain. We'll give the instructions and then we'll do this.
Okay. So why don't we,
Got a couple requests. We have a couple people who can't
yeah,
participate. We have two people that want to be together. So I'll talk about the instructions and then
I'll work on the
Joni, you
groups.
got some of that to do because Joni's more tech savvy than I am. You don't want me doing this.
All
Um,
right, so let's see.
so again, we're going to be pairing you into groups of two, or are we going to do three, Joni? We're gonna stick with two, right?
Two, yeah.
So for each of you, for all of you, you're each going to get a chance to be the speaker and the listener. So I would like you to take the opportunity to think about something that you want to change, need to change, should change, or have been thinking about changing, but haven't changed yet, which means it's something you're ambivalent about, something you haven't gotten to yet. And obviously something you're going to be comfortable, sharing with a colleague or someone else from the group here. Um, so take a minute and think about what that would be. And then for the listener, you hopefully have a copy of that OR sheet in front of you. What we'd really like you to do is take one shot at each of those. And again, it doesn't have to be in perfect interview order. This is a little contrived, but that's okay. We want you to take a shot at asking one open-ended question, giving one affirmation, taking at least one swing at reflection because there's a lot of different types of reflections out there, and then, possibly summarizing that at the end. We got people on the road too. So
Yeah, I'm sorry if it doesn't work out according to exactly how people have requested, but I'll do my best.
So we'll do basically probably like 5 minutes one way, maybe a little less, and then we'll switch it so each person gets a chance to be speaker and listener. Because I'd like you to have one practice run at this before you sit down with somebody outside of here. And that way, if there's a question or a problem when we all reconvene right afterwards, Joni and I can discuss it with you and the rest of the group all at one pop. So to me, what I like doing is I like writing down each of those things. I literally write oars down on a sheet of paper or somewhere. And then as I do, I was doing it when Anthony was going, I was writing down what he was talking about, whether it was the boss or the stopping the meds or any of that stuff. I put a little O and then what the next thing was, just so I could kind of keep track of what he said. So if you want to do that too, either using that sheet or just freehand or typing it or whatever, you can do that.
Getting there. Just bear with.
You know, and my hope is that I'm actually hoping that you learn something about, you know, through this process, you actually learn something about this change process. For example, the vegetarian example that I always give, I've done this in group after group after group, and I've actually learned a whole lot about my exactly where my ambivalence comes from just from reviewing it so many times in trainings.
Okay. If you somehow got assigned and you weren't able to because you're driving or something, just pop back in and let us know. Okay? Everyone should be getting a request to go into a room. Ken and I will try to join if possible.
Yeah, we'll jump in here and there as we can, and then we'll all convene again afterwards.
Just look and see. Okay. So we've got some people who have not joined. So Letitia and Monica, if you can join room 1, if not, that's okay. Alex, I'm gonna ask you to join room. I'm gonna ask you to join room 3 because someone did not join that. See if I can. A lot of people didn't join. Okay. It looks like several people did not join
Mm.
when asked. Trying to like move people to spots so that they.
I was by myself in the
Okay, where I think what room number do you?
number 6.
All right, let's see. I'm gonna move someone in there now. If you can go back in. Well, Ken, it doesn't look like.
Not working?
Michael, were you able to get back in?
It doesn't have a place for me to get back in.
All right, let me see. Okay, so I'm gonna move you to room 14, Michael. That's somebody's in there. Did you get it?
Are
Oh,
you talking
David,
to-
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Hold on.
I haven't got nothing as of yet.
You were in 6? Oh, there.
Yes.
Okay. There is someone in 6 if you want to join again. I'll send it.
You know who's in there, David, with you? In 6?
Yeah,
It didn't-
Lisa Stevers is in there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why it's not allowing. me to move you back to that room. Isn't that interesting? So I'm going to move you to room 12. And Lisa, room 5. This is very confusing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who have not joined, so hopefully we will have some, a few people. Maddie, were you able to join or did you decide
I
not
did
to?
join, but there was no one else there.
Okay,
So
what number were you in? And
Group.
which number?
14.
Oh,
14.
she was the
Okay.
14. Okay. We were just trying to put somebody in there.
Oh,
All right,
sorry.
hold on.
That was all good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just if you could just stay,
Yeah.
said or summarize.
So the open-ended question is, what would it look like moving out to a new apartment? And then that's when the frustrations came in of the headaches of moving. And the reflection was, so it sounds frustrating, and that there's going to be a lot of frustration moving out. And then I think that's all what we got. Wasn't too much.
Yep.
Yep. And let's see.
And it looks like here in the chat we have Nadia, me and
Mhm.
Taylor talked about mornings, set the tone for the day, and understanding what affects our mood can really help us navigate our emotions. For some people, they may feel relaxed at the start of the day, quiet moment like sipping coffee. Others might feel like they have a wake up to a long list of things to do, sleep routines, and so on. Uh, Lisa, Maddie said you did great. You asked some great questions, had fantastic affirmations and reflections too. Great. Um, yes, Lisa, it was a little quick. I feel like you didn't have time to really get into it. Yeah,
That sounds
Lisa,
like a few people were able to make some progress on it.
yeah. So with that being said, again, Ken and I, so we were ambivalent about the breakout sessions, but they really are the way to learn and practice these skills. And, we suspected that we'd have a lot of people not want to participate. So, it kind of took a little bit longer to manually put everyone in the groups. So we're thinking for next session, not to do the breakout sessions, but if you can really prepare, for our next session by using the OARS worksheet. Ken's going to put that in the chat again, what you just used. When you're meeting with someone, it could be anyone, someone participating in services, a friend, a family member, and write down in those 4 quadrants the times that you used the OARS skills. Which specific OARS skill did you use? So we're going to come back in May and review that. But thank you for participating. Ken put it in the chat again. So we will also talk to our Washington liaisons about having all the materials getting sent out, making sure they're sent in a timely manner. But thank you all for participating, and we look forward to seeing you in May.